It is our good friend Greg Cosell. How we doing, Greg?
Brownie, what's happening? I guess you got a big quarterback controversy now, huh? After Case Keenum's performance?
Yeah.
Amazingly, no. It's gone somewhat under the radar.
Yeah. But
well, I think we should discuss that. I think we should make some news here. What do you think?
I don't know. I was pretty happy with the whole thing. I will say this, Greg. That game for a while was looking awfully similar to the postseason game against the Patriots. No punting, touchdowns every time they touched the ball. And the most amazing thing to me was you look at the end of the game, Greg, they only had 5 plays of 20 yards or more, and they still had over 500 total net yards.
And 3 total third downs. That's it. 3 third downs.
That's what's truly remarkable. But no, it was a pretty impressive. Look, the point is that preseason, you obviously would rather see good execution than poor execution. It doesn't matter who you're playing against. You'd rather see the players execute what they're being taught and coached every day in practice. You know this, Steve. I mean, that's what you want to have happen. No one is suggesting that this performance means that they're in the Super Bowl, although they clearly are a Super Bowl type contender with the talent on the roster and the quality of the quarterback. Speaking of which, they're going to have, I think, you guys are there. I'm not there, but I think they're going to have some tough cuts to make it at certain positions. They got a lot of talent on this roster at certain positions.
Like what? Name them.
D-line.
Right. Yeah, there's a couple of guys it's gonna be hard to get rid of. I mean, if the most they could probably keep would be what? 9, maybe. Even if they pushed it to 10 with a practice squad guy on as a 10th?
Well, the thing is, too, is as you know, Steve, way better than I do. I mean, you want guys to be able to play special teams if they're going to be bottom-end players on your roster. And usually D linemen don't. I mean, I guess ends can, but usually 300-pound defensive tackles don't play special teams.
Yeah, the way they've worked around that to still carry a large number of defensive linemen is they play nickel so much that they'll sometimes go a little lighter at linebacker with the 53, and that affords them the opportunity to take an extra defensive lineman, for example.
Now, I would argue, and again, I'm not there, so take it for maybe I'm totally off base, but I would say offensive line, there'll be some tough cuts as well after you get through who are basically the starters.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we've talked about that a lot. I mean, it's going to be you get through, Dawkins, Saffold, Morse, Bates, Spencer Brown, and Dan Kessenberry. There's 6.
Right.
And then, so and those are probably the first 6 in. Then you've got 2 or 3 guys, like Cody Ford is still hanging in there.
Greg
Mans has been a really
center
good
guard guy.
Alec, who's been good is Alec Anderson, the rookie free agent guard out of UCLA. He's played really well.
You want guys at that point who can play multiple positions. That's the key because look, you don't know how the season is going to play out, but you want guys who can play guard and center. The one guy who can do that.
They generally look for guys that offer position flex. But let's get to Keenum, Greg, because this was a bounce-back performance. Even Coach McDermott referenced it afterwards that Case was locked in after a subpar performance in preseason game 1, and he got a series with the ones after Josh exited and really kind of buttoned things up as far as his personal game was concerned.
Yeah, and they came out and they helped him with his first 2 throws, which came on what I call conventional play action, meaning he was under center. That helps define the reads and the throws. I guess the second one was a great route by Stephon Diggs and a really good ball by Keenum. But no, he was comfortable right away. People may forget that he's had success in this league as a starter. Obviously, we know what Case Keenum is. Everybody in the league does. Everybody knows he's not the guy you want to be your 17-game starter. But if you had to line up with Case Keenum, he certainly can do that. I mean, he got to an NFC Championship game. It wasn't that long ago. So he can play quarterback in this league, and he was really sharp. I thought he saw things really clearly. Obviously, does not have a big gun. And it's funny when you saw him throw the ball right after Josh. It's like, wow, what a difference. But Allen may have the strongest, purely strongest arm in the league. But I think to me the biggest thing that stood out offensively, and I don't know how you guys felt, but I thought the run game really stood out to me.
Well, I did too, except that they were running against the junior varsity at best.
No question.
And they were supposed to, if they're going to play their starters and do that, they're supposed to dominate a team like that.
Yeah, but it continued with the second team and the third team.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I mean, even down into the deep into the offensive line rotation for the Bills, they were still pushing the Broncos all over the football field.
But here's what I will say to that. I would say that one of the things that definitely stood out, though, was how much they ran with the quarterback under center. Now, I don't know. Obviously, Josh only played the first series, so we don't know what's going to happen. Obviously, the third play of the game was outside zone with Allen under center. I think this is where Rodger Saffold is a big, big factor, because Rodger Saffold has a ton of experience, guys, as you know, as a zone run blocker. He did that with the Titans. He did that with the Rams. And I think that pickup is a really good one if they'd like to run the ball a little more. And I'm talking about a conventional run game. I mean, we know Josh Allen in critical situations. They're still going to ask him to run if it's 3rd and 3. We know all that. But at some point, and we saw this toward the end of last season, you do need to line up and run the ball conventionally. That's the way it goes in this league. You can't, as great as Josh is, and with the weapons that they have on the outside, and I want to get to Shakir again because he's one of my favorites. But you still have to line up and run the ball. And look, last year the games they won by big margins, but they also lost close games. And there are times in games, and I think, Steve, you would agree with this, even from the days of the K-Gun where you were so explosive offensively. There are kind of times where you just need to reset your offense and get some continuity and stability, and that happens more with the run game than throwing it all over the yard.
Right. It also gives you a chance, like the Bills, to close out some games or get to halftime or get out of a series. And to having the ability to grind out a first down also makes it possible sometimes that you don't, and I know it sounds crazy, and we did this with the K-Gun as well, and I've seen it happen with the Bills. Even if you don't score, you get down, get a 3-point field goal or whatever, or you miss a field goal, the defense is back out there after 4 plays because you're carving this other defense up, and unless you keep scoring like they did against the New England Patriots, your defense starts to wear out, and it starts to give life to the other offense just for the sheer fact that they're out there so much.
Yeah, you don't want your defense playing 75 snaps a game.
Right.
You just don't. No matter how good your offense is, you just don't want that to be the case every week.
All right, so let's get to Shakir. Now, you said he's quickly becoming one of your favorites. Do you like him better than your favorite George Pickens about 2 months ago? Has he unseated him yet, or?
No. they're different, Brownie. They're different. But Shakir, look, we talked about him, I think, briefly last week as well. I really liked his tape coming out. I'm not the least bit surprised that he's performed well. I don't know what he's been doing every day in camp, obviously, but, in the games, it's evident that this guy has a feel. He knows how to get open. He's very smooth. He's very comfortable. I mean, when he caught that first ball, which was not that one we're looking at, but he caught a 22-yarder, and it was actually on a 7-stop. It might be this one we're looking at right now. Yeah. See, to me, something very subtle, and Steve, you'll appreciate this, just his run after catch there. It wasn't a long run, it wasn't a 30-yard run, but he's just smooth. He's an easy mover. He has an awareness, a savvy to him, a feel. I'm really curious how this, we know that you have Diggs, one of the best in the league, Davis, who could join that category, with continued growth. We know that McKenzie is going to get meaningful snaps. They brought in Crowder. I think Shakir is going to find a place in this receiving core, and I think he's one of those guys that they're going to have to find snaps for.
What about the Bills' defense? We've talked a lot about how they've upgraded and rotated the guys up front. that we've been talking a lot about how many safeties they may keep, whether it's 5 or 6. Cam Lewis has been taking snaps at safety so he can play nickel, outside corner, and safety. So that gives them some flexibility to maybe to sneak another roster spot at another position. Linebacker, they're getting a lot of good play from Spector and Bernard. Also from Edmonds and Milano, of course. Just what are your thoughts on how the defense is coming together and who's stood out to you, particularly out of the young guys?
Well, I'll tell you a kid who always shows up on film, always. And obviously he's not going to be a starter because they have two of the best safeties in the league. But I think Johnson always shows up on film. Despite his lack of desired and ideal size, he's aggressive. He's competitive as a box player. He did miss one tackle this week, but that's rare for him. I think he's savvy on the back end. We talked about that last week with the interception. He shows up. Don't you guys agree? I mean, again, you're there. But I think this kid shows up all the time on film. He just, you hate to be cliched, but, you guys will know what I mean. He just looks like a football player. He's aware of everything that's going on.
Yeah, big time. We both agree with you. And I think it's really been a juggling act. And I think we spoke to Brandon Bean about it in our production meeting last week. The Bills have made a concerted effort to keep him happy while he's not starting. Because they know he would love to get on the field, and they've done some things with his contract to make sure he's happy because they don't want to lose him.
And that's a great, I'm really happy to hear that because you never know how his season is going to play out. No one wants to see any injuries, obviously, but that's the nature of the game. And if either Poyer or Hyde had to miss some time, just me, and it sounds like the Bills brass feels the same way, I sense that they'd be pretty comfortable putting Johnson out there, and I think he can play both on the back end and he could play in the back. In other words, he could do at least tactically what Poyer and Hyde can do, even though he's obviously not quite at that level because they're two of the best. But you don't have to change your defense if you had to put Johnson out there.
Right. The Bills' pass rush didn't get a ton of sacks in this game. The first one came with the last few minutes of the game, and it was Elianku doing it. But some of the guys that got in early were moving Josh Johnson off the spot with some measure of consistency, hands in his face, etc. And Leslie Frazier is happy with that. He said it is not all about sacks. If you're moving guys off the spot and hurrying throws, he's pretty happy. It looked like Shaq Lawson and A.J. Epenesa were the guys doing that early.
Yeah, and I think I agree with Leslie. I think it's about speeding up the quarterback and disrupting the timing of the pass game. That's critical. I remember talking to Dick LeBeau years ago, and he said, look, sacks, they come and they go, but you want to make sure you get the quarterback to play fast. And I think that's probably what you're talking about here. Epenesa he looks quicker to me, certainly quicker than when he came into the league. He's probably still more of a speed to power guy. He's got strong hands. He knows how to use them. He knows how to play off contact. But he certainly has gotten quicker with a change of direction and his short area burst. And I'm real curious to see his season. Lawson, to me, I would say he's never really been a true edge pass rusher. I think he's at his best as a strong side run defender. He's got really good point of attack strength. He uses his hands really well. This is not to say he can never rush the quarterback, but I don't necessarily think that the strength of his game is as an edge pass rusher. But I think those kinds of players are players you need on your defensive line.
What are some of the other defensive line qualities you've seen? Because there's some guys like Jaquan Jones, Shaq, of course, Jordan Phillips back in the fold, Tim Settle, although he didn't play this last week.
They are really deep, Steve, at D tackle. I mean, that's another, we were talking about their D line. I mean, Jones started, obviously with Oliver. I don't know if, we know Oliver's a starter. Does it appear Jones would be the starter when the season starts next to Oliver? Because Jones is a good, solid pro. I mean, Oliver is a true 3 technique with that gap ability, that one gap ability. So Jones would be more of the one technique, the nose kind of player. But no team lines up, in the same front on every snap, obviously. Jones has always been a really solid player. And then you got Phillips, and I know I'm missing someone who's
Tim Settle.
What's that?
Tim Settle.
Yeah, he was phenomenal last week. And I remember when he got drafted, I knew some coaches on the staff at Washington, and they said that if he, could keep his weight down and stay in shape, that he had dominant traits. So, they've got 4 guys right there that you can feel really good about lining up and playing with. And, this is a really deep group, and you really want to have that in this league with so many teams throwing the ball out of the gun, teams going more up tempo. And that kind of thing. So, you want to be in a position. It's hard for 300-pound guys to play 75 snaps a game. That's just hard. Yeah. Now, obviously, Oliver's not 300 pounds, but most D tackles are closer to that. Right. And it's just hard for them to play 70 snaps a game. So you need that kind of rotational strength.
Yeah, and it looks like they'll have it. The last one from me, this guy's been somewhat of an enigma through training camp for them. Flashed on Saturday, O.J. Howard. Has been trying to acclimate himself to this system, finally flashed and made a play, in the end zone on one of the drives. But what did you see from him overall on tape besides just the touchdown?
Well, again, we know that Knox is a really good receiver and a really good athlete, and he can detach from the formation, and we know that. So the question becomes, what are they looking for as a second tight end? Because Howard obviously caught the touchdown, but I really took a close look at him at his snaps. He had some really good one-on-one blocks versus defensive ends in the run game. It was a 6-yard run by Cook that I took note of. There was an 11-yard run by Moss that I also made note of. Howard's always been a really solid inline blocker. And he was a really athletic guy. I know he's had some lower body injuries, so I'm not sure where he stands in that regard. But when he came out of Alabama, people spoke about his intermediate and vertical route running ability. Now, Knox is not a great inline blocker. That's not the strength of his game. And obviously, the Bills are not necessarily, they haven't been, one of those teams that lines up with tight formations and says, here we come, we're going to run the ball. So, he's battling against Sweeney, I would assume, right? Is for the number 2 spot?
Yeah,
and Quentin Morris has actually, 85.
He got a lot of snaps this week.
Yeah, and he has played well during training camp. We were out he one-handed one in the back of the end zone this morning, did Quentin Morris. I mean,
he's a converted receiver from college.
I know, he's a little smaller. He's a receiver. You're right.
Yeah, he has been one of those guys, and true to the Bills' culture over here, he's gotten better and better and better and better. So we'll see if his better is now good enough to get on the field.
And I'm sure you saw it on tape too, Greg. They moved him around a little bit. He was almost serving in a similar role in which they utilized Reggie Gilliam. They were lining him up in the backfield a little bit, pre-snap, and moving him around.
So those kinds of guys, as you know, Brownie, then it comes down to how they see them in the context of their offense. They might like Howard, but if they decide that position, the movement like that is more valuable, then sometimes that's the way it works with given teams. But I was impressed with Howard's run blocking ability this week. I thought that stood out.
Greg, thanks. It's always great talking to you. It's the first chance I've had to get now in your new stand. I've been gone and off, and it's nice to see you.
I know you had the golf tournament last week, Steve.
Well, first things first, obviously. So good to have you back. How was your off season? I didn't get a chance. Did you do anything fun?
Well, no, because we moved, so we didn't go anywhere. So, I was telling Brownie that basically what I did, Steve, and I know you'll crack up with this, is I basically came into work during my vacation and just leisurely watched tape all summer and ran through a whole bunch of stuff, NFL stuff, college stuff. So, but you already know I'm a little nuts when it comes to that.
Yeah, you use your vacation to do work.
You are certifiable for sure.
Yeah.
But that's why we love you. So we'll catch up with you next week. Thanks for joining us, Greg. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Greg.